Ding dong, the witch is dead. Shane Bowen has officially been fired by the New York Giants, and we all can rejoice. It has finally happened. The inevitable has finally come to fruition. I'm Bryce Gelman. What's going on? A little bit of an early stream for me. I don't ever go live this early, but we obviously have the big news of the day in Shane Bowen. So I'm like, you know what? I'll fire it up. So apologies about my disheveled figure. But I had to do it. I had to come on here, and I didn't mean to time this up almost perfectly with Sean and talking Giants. That was not the plan. I was gonna go live when I was ready, and then it just so happened to be 10 o'clock. But let's get into it. Let's get into it because this was inevitable. We saw the product on the field. We saw the level of talent the Giants had going into the season, and somehow the defense got worse from last year to this year. I've got stats. I've got the rankings. I'm going to bring those up. But first, these are all just big picture things. Shane Bowen might have been the worst coordinator in NFL history. I don't believe that's hyperbole. Again, when you look at the talent the Giants defense had, adding Javon Holland, adding Paulson Adebo, drafting Abdul Carter, no major losses on that defense, and somehow they got worse. It's almost impossible to do what the Giants did, and they did it. And this was a long time coming. Like, I don't think there was anyone out there that thought he'd last to the end of the season. I think a lot of people thought he'd get fired during the bye week, which would have made sense had yesterday not happened. Had the fifth time this season the Giants blew a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter happened. The first time in NFL history. Oh, and there's 7 games left in the season. Or 6. I think it's 6. Either way, I digress. This team, it's almost hard to put into words how incompetent their defense has been. It's hard to put into words how disappointing that unit has been. When we went into this season, and you got asked, what is this team excelling? What will their strengths be? And everyone and the mothers said it is going to be their defense. Their offense is going to be historically bad, but the defense is going to keep this team competitive. We knew how rough the schedule was. No one expected them to make the playoffs, but at least 6 to 7 wins. That was doable, considering their defensive front, considering their additions in the secondary, considering, the 2 draft picks. And Tyler Newman and Drew Phillips, everyone expected them to take a step up. And the reality of the situation was that didn't happen. That didn't come to fruition. The Giants' defense ended up being historically bad considering the talent that they had. And expending a top 3 pick on what people thought was a generational edge rushing talent who has been really good this year. Has been really good. His pressures have been solid. The sacks obviously haven't jumped off the page. He only has a half sack. He still doesn't have a full sack, which I think a lot of people didn't expect as well. I digress. This Giants defense has been pathetic. It really has. And now even yesterday, you saw the step up from Darius Alexander with 2 sacks and a half. You're even starting to see some development. It's still the Giants allowed 34 points. And on the first play of overtime, allowed a 75-yard touchdown to Jahmyr Gibbs, with Dexter Lawrence not on the field. And we've been seeing it. And this isn't the first time. This is not the 3rd season in a row where Dexter Lawrence has almost given up. He's gotten to the point in the season where I got nothing to play for. Season's over. I don't like my defensive coordinator. So you know what? I'm not going to try. And that's where we're at with the heart and soul of the defense. And who people I thought was a top 10 player going into this season, who's been massively underwhelming. And obviously, I'd like to see Dexter Lawrence back with Big Blue. Sean and I discussed this on One Giant Step. Check that out wherever you get your podcast. But we discussed it last night, where we both understand where Dexter Lawrence is coming from, but you see who he's dealing with as defensive coordinator, and you can't blame him for giving up in the way that he did. That's not to say we agree. with Dexter Lawrence completely giving up as an NFL player, making millions of dollars. There are people busting their asses, working blue collar jobs throughout the country. People working in dangerous conditions on construction sites. People like truck drivers driving for 14 hours straight. And Dexter Lawrence is making millions of dollars. You're not going to show up. You're going to give up on the season. But that is due to who his defensive coordinator was. And that is due to an unserious coach, an unserious defensive coordinator who going into the season, all right, we knew his scheme from last year, the 3-4. And it felt like every week there was a change in scheme. And every week it felt like the scheme wasn't directly built to beat the opposing team. I was like, you know what? Let's run man. You know what? Well, let's run the 3-4. It just never felt like the Giants had a good grasp of what needed to happen game in and game out to win. They never did. And that largely could be attributed to Shane Bowen, who I said before, and I don't think it's hyperbole to say this, is one of, if not the worst defensive coordinator in NFL history. You saw the product on the field. You saw it. And how many times, let me ask you this, how many times did you watch the Giants and thought, you know what? I trust the defense. I trust Shane Bowen to draw up an efficient defensive scheme. I trust the Giants to not blow this crazy lead that they have in the fourth quarter. I think yesterday against the Lions, there couldn't have been many people who thought the Giants were going to win that game, or at least hold on. And of course, it happened to be, if Jake Bates' field goal goes 3 feet to the right, the Giants win the game. I understand that. Not to say that we didn't expect that, considering what we've seen from the Giants in the past. These kickers get superhuman powers and kill the Giants on these long ass field goals, setting career highs. It's par for the course. I think every Giants fan expected that kick to go in, so I digress. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. What matters is the Giants blew a game yet again. And it's not just due to Shane Bowen. I thought he schemed up a pretty good game. Doesn't change the fact they blew that game. Their defense collapsed yet again. No one deserves to survive that. And I woke up today. My first thought, I shit you not, my first thought, I really hope Shane Bowen is gone. And I picked up my phone, and lo and behold, Shane Bowen is gone. It's a Monday, Thanksgiving week. You know what? Yeah, it sucks that our football team is 2-10, right? At this point, I think it's hard to even keep count. But hey, we started the week on the right note. So man, I'm happy in what has been a very unhappy season. There haven't been many moments where, we can sit back and be like, you know what? Feels good to be a Giants fan. And let me just say this season has had way more of those moments than any year of the last 2 years. Not even Tommy DeVito, like the Linsanity run of Tommy DeVito, which of course lost the Giants Drake May, who looks to be a top 5, top 10 quarterback in the league. There hasn't been a moment where Giants fans have been as excited as they were against the Eagles in what was the franchise's biggest win since the playoff victory, and then going, past that since they won the Super Bowl. That was the Giants Super Bowl. And we said it at the time, Eagles fans clowning us, whatever. That was the truth. It was the Giants Super Bowl. So we've had that moment. We had the Chargers win, Jackson Dart's debut. We've had good moments. We've also had a multitude of other potential good moments ripped from us because of Shane Bowen's defense, and by extent, because of Shane Bowen. And now he's gone. And what I will say, this is too little, too late. And Brian Daboll's indignance, I think, is what lost him the job. And it wasn't just that. I'm going to say that's one of the many reasons. Another reason I've harped on this a million times. Brian Daboll was extremely immature. No one wanted to work for him. That's why the only guy that he can get was Shane Bowen. And Brian Daboll, for whatever reason, every single week, after the Broncos game, after the Saints game, which wasn't totally on him, after the Bears game, Brian Daboll defended Shane Bowen every single week. And eventually Brian Daboll was fired before Shane Bowen, might I add. And that was one of the reasons of his firing. You are unserious as a head coach in the NFL. If you continue to employ this guy, and not only just employ him, but continue to defend him in the media every single week. And I understand that's his defensive coordinator. That is, of course, what he's going to do. He's not going to sit there and throw his defensive coordinator under the bus if he's not going to get fired. That doesn't change the fact that he should have been fired. And it is too little too late. I'm not saying that Shane Bowen getting fired after week 4 or week 5 of the season would have changed the fortunes of the season. What I'm saying is we'll never know. And you got players quitting on the team. You know, Abdul Carter falling asleep in the facility, as I mentioned before. And I've harped on this point very recently a multitude of times. Dexter Lawrence giving up on the team, which has become the norm. You want to have guys on the defensive side willing to die for the defensive coordinator. You want a leader amongst men. Shane Bowen wasn't even close to that, guys. He couldn't even lead a high school football defense. Just never felt like those guys were locked in and ready to fight for their guy. And you've seen a lot of stuff. You see reports. You see it with the naked eye on the field. These guys just don't want to play hard for Shane Bowen. And this was just, listen, like this was a no-brainer move. It had to happen. And I'm happy it did. I'm happy it did. I mean, it's just unfortunate it took another historic collapse for it to happen. I think the Broncos game was enough. 33 points allowed in the fourth quarter was inexcusable. I don't think we'll ever see anything like that. But it took this game against the Lions, a game in which the Giants were favored to lose by 13.5 points. 13.5. And they could have had a 6-point lead. I guess they had after the Jameis touchdown, what was that? A 10-point lead? 27-17. Or yeah, I guess that was the case. It's a game they should have won. In the spot that they did, but they were playing with house money at that point in the game. No one expected the Giants to even compete with the Lions in that game. And I think it's just hilarious that even in a game in which the Giants really gave themselves a chance against a team that everyone expected to beat them by 100 points, them blowing the game is what was enough for Shane Bowen to go. Again, they were playing with house money. It was a good situation for the Giants. They looked really good. And yet, defense collapsed once again in another very winnable game. And Shane Bowen was fired. So now who replaces him? Charlie Bullen. I don't know. I guess we'll find out how to pronounce that. I think it's Bullen. I think it's Bullen. Outside linebackers coach has presided over a Defensive Player of the Year season for Brian Burns. Has presided over, up until his injury, a major step up for Kayvon Thibodeau this season. So I think if you want to look at all the different units, and of course it's the one unit with the most talent, no one's denying that. But if you're looking at every single unit, of course, number one is Carmen Brasillo, but I'm talking about on the defense, Bullen deserved the job. He did. You're not going to elevate the secondaries, coach. You're not going to elevate the middle linebackers, coach. That was never going to happen. And Bullen, he's been in football for a very long time. 18 years as a coach. Did come in with Shane Bowen, which I think is somewhat disqualifying in terms of whether or not he wants this job long term. Even if he is amazing here, like I don't know. I really don't think it is going to take much to have a defense looking better than how it was under Shane Bowen. And I've got some stats. And via Bobby Skinner, who's the best. He's the best. So what I was mentioning earlier, the defense from 2024 to 2025 got worse, even after they dedicate a shit ton of assets, cap room, of course, the number 3 overall pick, to that defense. It makes no sense. The scoring defense went from 21st in the league. The passing defense went from 8th, 27th, and 29th, and they got worse in every single category, even the 27th and the 29th. They are now 30th in scoring defense, 23rd in passing defense, 32nd to no one's surprise in rushing defense, and 31st in EPA per play. And as of this week, the Giants in the modern NFL era are allowing the most yards per carry in NFL history at 5.6. 5.6 yards a carry. It's not like they played world beaters the entire season in terms of running backs. Yes, Jahmyr Gibbs is a generational talent. In my opinion, he's the best running back in the league. He's got the most burst. He's a great pass-catching running back. So I understand, but listen, there's no excuse to allowing a guy in like 15 rushes to put up 215 yards. And then, at the end of the game, the 75-yard rush, whatever it was, 70 yards, 65, whatever the hell it was, yard touchdown to start the overtime period. Like, I get it. If you're getting blown up by guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, is it ideal? No. But is it expected? Yeah. Saquon Barkley up until the Eagles game, the second one, was inept. Averaging the lowest yards per carry in a very long time. I think in his career. And he blew the Giants up. Blew the Giants up. It was a get-right game for him. And I'm sure that's a game that he had circled on the calendar. After a terrible start to a season, this is where I get it back. The Giants, they faced J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey against the Broncos. Ran all over them too. I mean, it's just like, this was a historically bad defense under Shane Bowen. And it is mind-numbing as to why it took until November 24th, after week 12, to fire the guy. And I will sit here and I'll say it's better late than never. It had to happen, and I'm glad it did happen. Shane Bowen will go down as the worst defensive coordinator in Giants history. It is a shame how he has ruined this defense and has wasted all of this talent. Everyone said that this Giants defensive front would be the best defensive line in football. I thought it. You thought it. Media members, pundits, talking heads, everyone thought it. And the fact of the matter is, this defensive front four hasn't wrecked anything. They'd probably get shut down by Alabama. No, I'm not going to say that. They beat Alabama 80-0. But they have been massively underwhelming. They have been. I mean, 4 very solid defensive linemen. Dexter Lawrence, when he's not hurt, when he's actually playing to win, is the best defensive tackle in football. Brian Burns has had a defensive player of the year season. Like, props to him. He's one of the only guys who showed up this year. Consistently has been amazing. Second in the NFL in sacks. Number 1 is having one of the best seasons in the NFL in recent memory. And Myles Garrett, he's probably the most impactful player, non-quarterback in the NFL. Brian Burns is second to that. If not for Myles Garrett, Brian Burns would probably be defensive player of the year. You've seen Kayvon Thibodeau take a step up. You've seen now Darius Alexander figure it out. Albeit it's against the Lions' putrid interior offensive line, but I digress. The Giants' defensive front has been terrible. I understand the secondary has left a lot to be desired. They have. Playing Deonte Banks in multiple games in a season is going to kill you. It is. And of course, the Giants' defense looked the best it has looked in a very long time because Deonte Banks was benched, healthy scratch last night or yesterday. But I can't get over the fact that this defense has been this bad. It's unfathomable. It really is. You get really good offensive outputs from Jackson Dart and the Giants. 2 of the best defenses in the league. You're the only team in the NFL who's put up 30 points against them. The Broncos and Eagles. And what do you have to show for that? After all these amazing offensive performances, Jackson Dart looking every bit of the franchise quarterback, tag that has been placed on him. And what do you have to show for that? 2-10. 2-10. And again, we knew this schedule was difficult. We knew they were going to have a difficult time winning games. But if you look at how they've lost these games, it's infuriating. It is. And it makes it 10 times worse because it's not like they're getting blown out in all these games. It's not like their offense is completely inept. They are scoring points. Mike Kafka has done an amazing job. In the last 2 weeks, they've looked good offensively in both weeks. I guess not necessarily 2 weeks ago, but this past week against the Lions unit that has looked very solid. Against the Eagles, held up very well, even though the Eagles' offense are, they're all frauds. Jalen Hurts sucks. Either way, Jameis Winston looked like a top quarterback in the league. The trick plays worked. Everything went the Giants' way offensively, and the defense yet again collapsed. Think about how difficult it is for a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson, who had a career day. Had 100 yards in the first quarter. Looked amazing. Was open on every play. Had the game of his life. And your team still loses the game. We're fans. And it's frustrating watching our team blow games in this fashion. Think about how it is in the players. Think about how tough it is in the special team unit. In the backup, a guy like Corey Black, who's come in and done a pretty good mop-up job for what everyone expected. He plays the game of his life. Not saying that he did, but if a guy like that plays amazing, and you're constantly getting let down by your coordinator, or one or two other players on the defense, think about how infuriating that is. I just did all that I possibly could have done to win. And yet again, this has happened. And yet again, it is not my fault. That's a very difficult spot to be in. It really is. And again, we're fans. We watch the game on the couch. We watch the game from the stands. We're not on the field. We don't experience this firsthand. We're not behind the scenes. Can't always trust what we see from the media. So for these players, I'm sure this was a very welcomed announcement. When they showed up to the facility today and they saw and heard that Shane Bowen was gone, I'm sure they all breathed a massive sigh of relief. Because these guys are losing money. That's what sucks the most for these defensive players. They played the game of their lives. They're losing money because you lost the game. And if another player on that defense is getting exposed, that is not a good look for you either. Let's say Javon Holland plays an amazing game. Tyler Newman lets him down. That's not a good reflection of the entire safeties unit, right? Drew Phillips is amazing. Doesn't commit any penalties. Oh, but Deonte Banks allows 5 catches for 150 yards and a perfect passer rating. That's not going to reflect positively on Drew Phillips. You catch my drift. And all of this is just a direct result of Shane Bowen being the worst defensive coordinator in franchise history. And you could put a lot of the blame on him and say it's his fault here, it's his fault there. We won't know until we see. And I'm very glad there are 5 more games left in this season for us to finally get a sense of what this team actually is. And at this point, yes, I understand their injuries. I understand that Dexter Lawrence is fully checked out. I don't think you're going to be able to get him back into the mindset of trying to compete at his hardest. I don't think that's possible. But what I do know is we are not going to have to watch Shane Bowen's pathetic-ass scheme week in and week out. We're not going to have to watch the Giants in a winnable situation with the other team needing a field goal, playing a soft-ass, cushy zone, a prevent defense. Like they did again yesterday. They did it again. Instead of playing press man and having the corners be right up in the receiver's face, they had them 5-10 yards off the line of scrimmage. And guess what happened? The Lions made some completions and put themselves in position for Jake Bates to kick the game-tying 59-yard field goal, which is exactly what they needed, considering the Giants didn't kick the field goal before, which I think is another problem, but that's not what we're discussing today. What we're discussing today is Shane Bowen's firing. I'm not going to sit here and talk about that. I was very disappointed in Kafka, and I know a lot of other people out there wanted them to go for it. But once you get stuffed at the 6-yard line, you got to kick the field goal. You know, if the play calling wasn't terrible down there, if they decide to throw the ball on second down and then run it on third, then you go for it. And you're in a much better spot to go for it. But from the 6-yard line, that's just not going to work out. You don't have Malik Neighbors. You don't have a Cam Scatterby. You don't have a very reliable tight end. Doesn't make sense to do that. It doesn't. No matter what you want to hear. No matter what you want to say. No matter what analytics you want to point to, it was the 6-yard line. Jameis Winston is your quarterback. You don't have Lamar, who sucked. You don't have Josh Allen. You don't have Mahomes. You don't even have Dart. You have Jameis Winston. Take the points. Take the points. That's not what we're talking about today. Talking about Shane Bowen. And yes, I know I timed this up perfectly with Sean's Talking Giants podcast, which is very funny. And honestly, you know, we were going to do a reaction pod. Pretty crazy stuff happening in his world. You know, kids, job, life. Got to take a train. So we'll see. We might do a reaction pod. I'd like to. But, you know, this is the consolation prize that you'll get. You know, if you're enjoying, drop a follow, subscribe on YouTube, yada, yada, yada. And we can all sit here and rejoice together. That's the point of this. You know, I've done a lot of Giants therapy sessions. I did a few Knicks therapy sessions especially after that loss in game 1. You know, when they lost the Pacers, did a therapy session there, even though I was dejected, depressed. Every single adjective you want to use there. This is the opposite, guys. We're rejoicing. This is an exciting moment in Giants history. And hopefully yesterday is the last time for a very long time that we will witness that incompetent of a Giants defensive unit. But the guys the Giants seem to be interested in, they are more serious head coaches. They are guys that people respect around the league. They are considered, and hopefully will be, mature enough to be a head coach in the NFL. No one wanted to work with Brian Daboll after what happened with Wink Martindale, after what I'm assuming people heard from that locker room. And we saw it firsthand when Jackson Dart gets hurt. Forgot which game that was in. When Jackson Dart gets hurt, of course, you know, the whole thing where Daboll runs to the tent, gets a $100,000 fine. I want to say that was the second Eagles game, the first Eagles game. You know, remind me of that in the chat. I'm just really focused on Shane Bowen here, but we saw it time and time again from Brian Daboll, being an idiot, being immature, letting his emotions get the best of him. I'm not talking about on the field when you got a bad call. Like, that's exactly the type of reaction that we're looking for. Fires up his fans, to fire the team up as well. If there's a bullshit call, he's going to call it out. That's okay. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking behind the scenes. I'm talking about what happened with Wink Martindale. And you might be saying, well, Bryce, why are you talking about Brian Daboll? He was fired 2 weeks ago. But again, he was the one who hired Shane Bowen. Because no one else wanted to work for him. There was no other good defensive coordinators in the NFL who were like, you know what, I'm going to drop everything and go work for Brian Daboll. Because he handled that Wink Martindale situation so well. There was no one out there who said that. But Shane Bowen was like, hey, you know, look at this. I'm probably going to fire from the Titans. We got this opportunity to come to New York. It's a linear move, lateral move. And you know what? Screw it. Giants defense is way worse on paper than it was this year. That's just what I'm going to constantly look back at. I'm like, you're getting better production from these guys. Brian Burns is having a much better season this year than he did last season. Kayvon Thibodeau's taking a step up. You added Abdul Carter. You added Javon Holland. You added Paul Debo. You thought you're going to get the step up from Tyler Nubin, who's been terrible. Cordell Flott has emerged into a guy the Giants will need to sign as a really solid second cornerback. And yet this defense has been this bad. Like, there isn't anything else you could point to. It's scheme. It's straight up scheme. It's not utilizing these guys to the best of their abilities. But here's the thing, like, you are getting individual step-ups here. Like, again, I just highlight a bunch of different players, additions, again, like improvements from these guys. And yet this Giants defense has still blown 5 double-digit leads. Most in NFL history. The defense is still allowing 5.6 yards per rush. The worst in the modern NFL era. This is unfathomable. This is historic levels of incompetence. And it's just a terrible reflection of Brian Dable. A week of Mike Kafka, where they defended this guy. Where they knew. Everyone knew exactly what was right in front of us. That Shane Bowen was an idiot. He was not a leader amongst men. No one wanted to play hard for him. And he was doing the absolute least with the talent that Joe Shane gave him on defense. And everyone's like, I've seen a lot of stuff out there like, all right, well, now that Shane Bowen is fired, we could focus on Shane Bowen's, on Joe Shane's terrible roster that he's built. Dude, look at that defense and tell me it's a terrible roster. It's like, look at that defense and say that it's terrible with a straight face. You can't. You really can't. You know, if you want to point out the lack of depth, that's fine. If you want to point out that, the Chauncey Golston signing, if you want to point out the James Hudson signing, if you want to point out, the continuation of trying to get the most out of Evan Neal and then not playing him in a single game all season long. Same thing with Jalen Hyatt. If you want to point out all that stuff, be my guest. Be my guest. He's not been a flawless general manager. And honestly, the negatives outweigh the positives. But you can't sit here and tell me that defense has no talent. There's only one way to find out. There really is. The Giants on paper right now don't have much cap space this offseason. Cap space, it is a farce in the NFL. Seriously. It's like it doesn't exist. It's fake. It's fugazi. They'll restructure every deal and somehow end up with $30 million in cap space, and we'll see who they sign. And of course, the cap will go up. They'll make some, they'll get some extra dough off that. They have some serious decisions to make about what areas to prioritize. I think it's important that they fired Shane Bowen this early in the season. I mean, again, I think it should have been earlier, but it's better late than never. Because I think it's going to give the Giants a better sign of what they need to change up, what they need to do. Like Bobby Okereke, you going to bring him back? I don't know. Is Chauncey Golston going to be a cap casualty? I don't know. Was Tyler Nubin a bust? I don't know. Did he overpay Javon Holland? I don't know. There are a lot of question marks surrounding this defense. And we're going to see finally if this was a Shane Bowen thing or not. And like Charlie Bull, again, I mentioned him before. He's the interim defensive coordinator, was the outside linebackers coach, has presided over a defensive player of the year season for Brian Burns. We've seen a step up from Kayvon Thibodeau. He's the coach behind that. And naturally, he deserved this job. You've heard some good things in the Giants locker room about him. Of course, Shane Bowen was the one who brought him in. Doesn't mean he can't do a good job. Doesn't mean this guy can come in and at least partially show what we all expected going into the season. That's a competent defense. That's the best defensive front in football. And listen, I I point to like all of the individual steps up from this Giants defense, like the wide variety of guys who've looked better this year than any year in their career. Burns, Thibodeau, Cordell Flott, Darius Alexander's look good now. It's like Bobby Okereke has put it together in recent weeks. And yet they're allowing the most points in the NFL. And somehow are worse than they were last year. I said it to open this. Like, I think that Shane Bowen will go down as one of the worst coordinators in NFL history. And he will go down as the worst coordinator in Giants history. Like, it's insane that you look back 2 to 3 years ago. And the metrics were never good under Wink Martindale, like advanced metrics at all. It was more or less the takeaways, which, were top of the league. And that's what translated. And that's what you saw in the Giants in 2022. It's one of the large reasons why the Giants got to that point of winning a playoff game, because the Giants forced turnovers. And this defense has not been worse than any other team. I guess not been better than any other team in that regard. And it's yesterday was the first pick of the year. Like, come on. You can't make that shit up. You really can't. I mean, like, just the lack of capitalization on this team and the roster and the defense has just been insane. It's hard to believe. It's impossible to believe. And it's just like, man. Why the hell could they fire him earlier? Why couldn't Brian Daboll grow a pair of balls and fire him earlier? Hindsight's 2020. I guess I'm not even going to say hindsight's 2020 because we knew it all along. We knew that he deserved to be fired. I'm just glad it happened. I'm glad it finally happened. Again, I mentioned this earlier. Like, I woke up and my first thought was, I really hope I'm going to open my phone and Shane Bowen's fired. And when my phone started to blow up, sitting there in bed, I'm like, oh, please. And yes, it did come to fruition. I'm obviously way happier about this than I was the Brian Daboll firing, because I think as bad as Daboll was, as immature as he was, as bad of a decision that he made in hiring Shane Bowen, like, he was never the sole reason behind the Giants being as bad as they were. He was the scapegoat behind it. Shane Bowen is the main reason. You look all around the roster. You look at all these finishes. You look at everything. You consider everything. And Shane Bowen is the number one reason why the Giants are currently 2-10. That's it. Like, yes, there's decisions within each game in and game out, that could have went the other way. Kicks, very long kicks. Now, most recently with Jake Bates, that could have went the opposite way, and the Giants would have won these games. But the reason why they were even in these positions, the reason why they even gave Brandon Aubrey the chance to kick that long-ass field goal is because of Shane Bowen. Stuff that was able, like, we could all sit there, and even someone who doesn't necessarily know football that well could sit there and be like, why the Giants running prevent defense against the Cowboys when they have the best kicker in the league and they need a field goal to tie the game? Why is that happening? Against the Broncos, the same thing happened. They need to get down the field, kick a field goal. Why are they in prevent defense? Why are they allowing the Broncos to coast down the field? All of this stuff was elementary. It's the most basic part of being an NFL coordinator. It's not being a complete fucking idiot. That's it. Like, scheme matters at the end of the day. Like, there will be times when it comes down to the last snap where you played your hardest and sometimes it just doesn't work out. And there are other times when you make a million unforced errors and you gift the opposing team a game on a silver platter. And that has happened 5 times this season. 5. Let's say those games, which were all winnable, not even just winnable, they should have won them. The Giants were favored heavily in each and every one of those games. I'm sure you've seen the graphic where all the 5 score bugs of all the games the Giants have blown this season doesn't seem realistic, doesn't seem possible, right? The Giants are currently 2-10. Do the math. Do the math. 7-5. 7-5 if they hung on to all those wins, hung on to all those games to get wins. Can you imagine this team was at 7-5? Considering the schedule they had going into the season? With them losing Malik Neighbors in the 3rd game of the season, or the 4th game of the season. Losing Cam Scatterby against the Eagles. If I told you the Giants were 7-5, you'd tell me to get the fuck out of here. But of course they aren't. And there wouldn't be any surprise if I told you they were 2-10 at this point. And if I did tell you that, you'd think, okay, Jackson Dart is not the quarterback of the future. He has not looked good. The defense has gotten let down by the offense every game. No, it's the opposite. It's quite literally the opposite of what we expected this season. We thought the offense was going to consistently let down the defense, and it couldn't be further from the truth. It's astonishing. It really is how this has consistently happened over the course of the entire season. This isn't a 1 or 2 game thing. This is like a week in and week out thing at this point. But the Giants defense is collapsing in historic fashion. And the man who bears the brunt of this blame is gone. Is gone. And Sean and I talked about this in One Giant Step. Check that out wherever you get your podcasts. He thought that Shane Bowen would keep his job until the bye week, until after the bye week, he'd get fired during the bye week, whatever. And I definitely thought this was it. Like, you don't survive another one of these, especially to a team that everyone thought would blow you out and put 45 points on the board. Yeah, Shane Bowen has schemed a good game through 3 quarters. Also, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. The Lions' interior offensive line might be the worst in the NFL right now, considering how they got manhandled by the Eagles and considering they allowed 2 sacks to Darius Alexander in the first half. They let Darius Alexander get a full sack before Dexter Lawrence or Abdul Carter got one. Come on. Come on. Shane Bowen was like, the Lions were like, you know what? They decided to wake up and we're going to make Shane Bowen look competent. And Shane Bowen, as we all expected, shot himself in the foot. Shot himself in the foot. And man, it's just like, all right, he's gone. Now what? Now what? And again, it's Charlie Bullen, the outside linebackers coach, who will be the interim defensive coordinator. I can sit here and tell you that I'm excited. And I am, but Giants play the Patriots Monday Night Football. National game. In front of the entire country. Got to be facing off against the top 10 quarterback in the league. And the guy who was shown the biggest jump from last year to this year. Not hyperbole. Straight up. Has been the most impressive out of the quarterbacks who didn't look good last year. And usually you see the guy, a rookie like that, play very well in their rookie year and then drop off in the second year, a la CJ Stroud, a la Jaden Daniels. But no. Different situation. They fired Gerard Mayo, brought in Mike Vrabel, Patriots legend. And Mike Vrabel was always one of the most competent head coaches in the NFL with what he did in the Titans. Their best season in years. And look how bad they've been since. It's going to be an extremely tough test. Again, on national television, on the road, in Foxborough. Jackson Dart will be playing in that game. No doubt in my mind. And let's see how this Giants defense fares. Let's see how it goes. That's all I got. That's all I have to look forward to. Let's see. Let's see what it was. Let's see if this defense decides, you know what? We got a new guy in here. We hated Shane Bowen. Now let's turn it around. Yeah, the season might be lost. And here's the thing. We looked at this 2 years ago where it was a situation where the Giants needed to lose out in order to get a top 3 pick, to get Jaden Daniels, to get Caleb Williams, and get Drake May. And of course, now we're looking back and they're like, fuck. Yeah, Jackson Dart, very good. Quarterback of the future. Not taking that for granted. Finally happened. Terrific. You'd rather have Drake May, obviously. You'd obviously have Drake May. But we looked at that then. Like, why isn't this Giants team tanking? Because you can't tell players to tank. You can't do it. They're fighting for contracts. They're fighting for like themselves and their livelihoods. This is what they love doing. They love going out, putting on the pads, and busting their ass for 60 minutes. Now, whether it be on special teams, both lines, the long snapper, the placeholder. These are all guys that would die for this sport. It's what they love. Can't tell them to tank. So hopefully this lights a fire under their ass. Hey, we got rid of that guy you all hate. Now let's see what you have. You want to prove yourself? You want to make some money? Show up. And I'm looking at you, Dexter Lawrence. I'm looking at you. Stop playing like an absolute dumbass. And prove to us over these last 5 weeks why you were considered one of the top players in football going into this season. I don't know what his thought process is. Like, here's the thing. There's 2 sides of the coin on this. One, he's playing like shit because he's holding out for a contract. They know how good he is. Everyone knows how good he is. And he's like, you know what, Joe Schoen? F you. I'm going to suck because I want a contract. I want to be restructured. And not in the restructuring in the way that you're going to convert everything to a signing bonus. I want an extension. I want to be paid as the best defensive tackle in football, like I am. Okay, fine. So that makes no sense. The other side of the coin is if he continues to play like shit and then asks out for a trade, you think the Giants are going to trade him? You think they're going to sell low on Dexter Lawrence when everyone knows his potential? When everyone knows, look at what Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark have done for the Cowboys. How good they've looked. Dexter Lawrence is better than both of them. He is. He's doubled much more than both those guys, probably both of them combined. And we're about to see, the Giants at this point hold the second overall pick. You look at the rest of their schedule, I see 2 or 3 wins. Jackson Dart has put them in a good spot, and especially now with Shane Bowen fired. And maybe all right, well, you keep Shane Bowen just in case, you want to lose all these games. And no, you can't do that. As much as we'd all like a better pick, we got to see what we have here without Shane Bowen leading the defense. And it's going to lend itself to multiple wins. It is. And not just because Shane Bowen is the worst defensive coordinator of all time. It's the fact they, Patriots game, loss. Commanders, that should be a win at home. Vikings, J.J. McCarthy is the worst quarterback in football. You definitely could see a win there. The Raiders, come on. And the Cowboys have played really well. Hopefully the Cowboys win that game to end the season. I don't really have much hate for the Cowboys until they start being good. So, you know what? It is what it is. Unless, the Cowboys need to win that game to get into the playoffs. In that case, you obviously want the Giants to win because as much as I'm indifferent towards the Cowboys these days, come on, you don't want to see the Cowboys make the playoffs. Never. Not like they do anything in the playoffs anyway. But I digress. The Giants have, a couple wins left on the schedule, and they'll probably play themselves out of the top 5. Ideally, they'd have still a top 10 pick. Having a top 10 pick, having as much talent as they do, having one of the most lucrative, intriguing head coach openings in the NFL. I understand there are concerns. There will be some trepidation from these top candidates to coach under Joe Schoen. I understand that. If the Giants want an established head coach, they want a Tomlin, they want a Harbaugh, I think Joe Schoen's gone. I do. But if they bring in a Shula, they bring in a Kubiak, Joe Schoen will probably stay. I don't think any one of if ownership wants him to stay, he'll stay. I don't think any one of those coaches who would be coaching for the first time as a head coach in the NFL would have motion to be like, I'm not coming here. unless Joe Shane is gone. Especially again, I think ownership likes him. Obviously, if they fired Brian Dable but didn't fire him, and like also I just don't know who else is out there. I don't. We talked about it before. I don't know if any of us could trust John Mara to make that decision to lead his own GM search, considering the state that he's in. Every time we talk about him, obviously prayers out to Mr. Mara, and very difficult situation when he's dealing with cancer sucks, and we hope he gets through it. But in that spot, in that condition, like maybe we should trust his kids more. Tim McConnell needs to go. I don't know, man. I don't know. I just Tim McDonald, yeah. I'm happy Shane Bowen's gone, and that's it. Talk about a lot of other things. When 50 minutes did not expect to go this long. Uh, yeah, the Mets made a crazy trade yesterday. The Knicks are a mess. I got to talk about that more. I'm dreading it. I am. I just a lot of concerns. A lot of concern with my Knicks. I can't not address the elephant in the room there. What a disaster that's looking to be. I who would have thought? And I'm sorry. I know I'm off point, but I haven't talked about it in a while. Who would have thought having your two best players be traffic cones on defense wouldn't work? Two guys that you could put it on an island and score on 9 times out of 10. Who would have thought that's really stupid? Two guys that can't defend the pick and roll if they're put in the pick and roll together. That's just a recipe for disaster. So I'm talking. I wanted to talk Giants. I couldn't not bring up the Knicks. They play tonight, I believe. Like it's been so tough to even pay attention. I am paying attention. Obviously, it's the Knicks. They play the Nets. All right, like in Brooklyn, you ever need a get right game? This is it. Destroy them. Come on. What are we doing? But that'll do it. That'll do it. Talked a lot of Shane Bowen. If you missed it, scroll back. A lot of good talk here. And listen, I know I'm not in the minority. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I really hope that this change and bringing in Charlie Bowen will reaffirm to all of us what we knew the entire time. And that's how bad Shane Bowen was as a defensive coordinator in the NFL. And let's see. Hopefully this defense rallies around Bowen. Only one way to find out, though. So stay tuned. Next talk coming. If they lose this game tonight, I mean, I'll probably go live after. Seriously. I mean, that might need to be the case. Really, it would be really, really bad. All right. That'll do it. If I don't speak to you before then, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy. It won't be like last year. We have to watch our Giants get blown out on Thanksgiving Day. Sit back, relax, enjoy turkey, pumpkin pie, all those great things. That'll be amazing. So, all right. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. I'll talk to you all very soon. Peace.